The players have been standing their ground, and the players have been right this whole time. In order for the WNBA to save this league right now, you have to open the books. Let me repeat, open the books. What's the big deal? Guess what? You open the...
In the ultra-protected, multi-billion-dollar world of professional sports ownership, there comes a breaking point when strategy collapses and desperation takes over. And right now, the WNBA appears to be standing at that exact moment. When strike threats no longer intimidate billionaires and tangible leverage evaporates, leadership often shifts from calculated negotiation to public pressure campaigns, demanding outcomes that are legally and mathematically unrealistic. That's what we're seeing unfold as veteran voices and union loyalists take to social media calling for transparency, justice, and even access to private financial ledgers, the now viral "open the books" narrative. But privately owned corporations are not obligated to surrender proprietary financial data to their labor force, and public outrage rarely overrides corporate structure. So, why push this demand so aggressively? Because beneath the optics lies genuine suspicion, a belief that creative accounting may be masking revenue, especially in the wake of the Caitlin Clark effect and surging league attention. What's unfolding is no longer just a labor negotiation. It's a high-stakes public relations battle involving perception, power, and internal trust. And as former stars defend the union's position, critics argue that demanding transparency from ownership while facing questions about internal transparency creates a dangerous contradiction. This isn't just about contracts anymore. It's about leverage, credibility, and who truly controls the narrative moving forward.
The players have been standing their ground, and the players have been right this whole time. In order for the WNBA to save this league right now, you have to open the books. Let me repeat, open the books. What's the big deal? Guess what? You open the books
And now the rallying cry has become crystal clear. Open the books. Think about that ultimatum for a second. It's bold, emotional, and legally baseless. That demand assumes the players' union is operating as an equal equity partner inside a multi-billion-dollar sports conglomerate, when in reality it functions as labor negotiating against ownership. The belief that stepping on the court automatically grants access to private financial ledgers reflects a deeply romanticized view of how corporate structures actually operate. In the hard, risk-driven world of professional sports ownership, the individuals who front the capital, absorb the losses, and control the assets maintain authority over proprietary financial records. A standard employee, no matter how talented, marketable, or culturally influential, does not automatically gain the right to conduct a forensic audit of their employer's books. That's not how privately owned enterprises function. And this is where the emotional argument begins to collide with corporate law. Because when you strip away the outrage and social media momentum, the core issue isn't transparency, it's leverage. And the uncomfortable reality check that follows may completely dismantle the logic behind the demand, forcing even the biggest stars to confront the structural limits of their negotiating power.
open the books.
Because they don't have to. They don't have to. It's the same reason that the owner of Target don't open the books to the person working register number 6. The same reason that the owner of McDonald's isn't opening the books to the guy.
The owner of Target doesn't open the books to the cashier, and a fast food franchise owner doesn't hand over proprietary financial statements to the employee working the drive-thru. And in the cold corporate reality of professional sports, the same principle applies. WNBA players are elite, specialized independent contractors, not board members or private equity shareholders, and billionaire ownership groups built on mergers, acquisitions, and aggressive capital management are never going to surrender proprietary financial data just to win a PR battle. Ownership has reportedly placed salary increases and housing concessions on the table, essentially signaling, take the offer or risk financial instability, because proving profitability to employees is not a legal obligation. But dismissing the players' outrage as ignorance misses the darker counterangle, fear of what analysts call Hollywood accounting. Over the last year, players witnessed record-shattering viewership driven by Caitlin Clark, sold-out arenas, a historic $2.2 billion media rights deal, soaring sponsorship revenue, and expansion franchise fees reportedly exceeding $100 million, Yet negotiations still revolve around a relatively modest team salary cap, while ownership claims operational losses. That contradiction fuels suspicion. Players believe expenses can be structured to erase profit on paper: inflated arena rent paid to ownership entities, executive compensation, depreciation write-offs, revenue allocations, all technically legal, yet strategically advantageous. When owners say they're losing money, it may be legally accurate while still feeling morally manipulative. The push to open the books becomes a desperate attempt to locate revenue players believe is being buried in accounting layers. Tensions escalate further around executive compensation transparency, with union voices questioning whether leadership salaries contradict claims of financial strain. And while players vent publicly, ownership doesn't engage in online arguments. They weaponize silence. The calculated 6-week communication freeze during negotiations wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Silence creates uncertainty. Uncertainty fractures solidarity. And in high-stakes labor disputes, psychological pressure can be just as powerful as financial leverage, potentially dividing locker rooms long before any final deal is signed.
Off season to not respond. And I actually think they use the waiting game there as a part of gamesmanship to cause a rift between economic classes, because not every single player in the league can afford to miss the WNBA.
This is where the waiting game becomes weaponized strategy, a calculated form of asymmetrical corporate warfare. Billionaire owners can afford to sit in silence for years without feeling financial pain, but a professional locker room is a fragile economic ecosystem. At the top, you have superstar executive committee members with global endorsement deals and overseas income streams. Beneath them sits the majority: role players, bench contributors, defensive specialists, athletes whose primary income depends on their league salary. When ownership received the union's proposal in December and chose not to respond, that silence wasn't accidental. It was tactical. Weeks passed. Deadlines approached. Anxiety intensified. And without updates, uncertainty began to erode solidarity. Mid-tier players started calculating rent, savings, and risk. Questions surfaced internally. Who can actually afford a prolonged standoff? Strategic silence doesn't just stall negotiations, it shifts pressure inward, forcing economic realities to collide inside the union itself. And that internal strain raises another uncomfortable layer of this dispute: public messaging versus private governance. While union leadership demands transparency from ownership in national interviews, critics argue that members themselves deserve full clarity about strategy, risk, and potential consequences. In high-stakes labor negotiations, moral authority is leverage, but only if unity holds. Once internal trust fractures, the entire power structure of the bargaining table can shift overnight.